Enterprising in my surroundings, I'm finding the quietest estates these days. Just representation of storm brewing, amazed that the focus remains the focal point of my change.
Hello and welcome to the Rambling Runner Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Chittum, and this is the podcast for all the dedicated amateur runners out there who are working hard to get better while balancing running with the rest of their lives. And this series, this Mastering 40 series that we're in right now, is brought to you by three specific sponsors: Inside Tracker, Previnex, and Tracksmith. I'm talking about Tracksmith right now because it's getting warmer outside. I just came back from a walk with my dog. It was like 60 degrees first thing in the morning. How nice is that? So do you need to replenish your outside running gear for the nice warm weather? Head over to Tracksmith today. They have some of the best stuff, and they're always putting out new stuff, which is something that I can appreciate, especially for a brand that has such just iconic things already in their collection. They're always updating it, and not just with new colors either. So head over to Tracksmith and use code RamblingRunner to save 15% on your first order over $75. I am just in love with their gear, especially their shorts. I am just a huge fan of their running shorts, and hey, I can start wearing them again soon. I'm not going to be running anytime soon, as you'll hear in this episode, but in terms of the weather, maybe I'll wear them when I'm mowing the lawn or something. I don't know. I definitely love wearing their running shorts, and you should go check them out today. So this episode, usually for the Mastering 40 series, I'll have a conversation with my running coach, James McCurdy, and my sports psychologist, Adrian Langelier. This is just a conversation with Adrian because there's no running happening right now, nor is there going to be any running anytime soon. So, hopefully you can learn something from my travails through this injury path, because it's not fun. But I was talking to some people who have been fans of the show for a while. I'm like, hey, I don't even know if I should be doing this anymore. I'm not sure if the running is going to be happening. And they had some interesting thoughts of saying basically like, hey, everyone gets injured. It'll be interesting to hear how Adrian's helping you through your injury and all of that. So that is why we put this out and are kind of still continuing the journey. Spoiler alert, I'm not going to be breaking 40 minutes in the 10K this summer. I'm not even sure if I'm going to be running a 10K this summer. The way things are going, man, I thought this injury was going to last like 2 or 3 days. It has now lasted almost 3 months, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. So what does that mean? Well, I still got to live my life. I still want to be an athlete. I'm just not going to be running, which can be hard because I work in the running industry, right? I'm a running coach and I'm a running podcaster. So it's hard to disconnect from running when so much of my life is revolved around running. So Adrian and I talk about that and about so much more. You'll basically hear me completely go off the deep end on sharing Adrian all the wild and wacky things that have been going through my head. I don't always feel that way, but because she's a therapist, I've treated it as a therapy session in that I just shared with her all the things that I have thought. I don't think about all these things all the time. This isn't the current state or, the state of my mind all the time. But I wanted to share all the things that I have been thinking about. I don't want you to think I'm going absolutely completely off the deep end and need some more serious help. But I did want to share with her all the things, not only for myself, but also if other people have experienced or are experiencing these sorts of things, that they can not only relate to it, but also get the same sort of advice from Adrian that I'm getting. So let's dive into it with Adrian Langelier.
Matt, good to talk to you again.
Adrian, I'm excited to chat. I just told you offline before we got started that we're going full therapy session on this one. So you've been my sports psychologist now throughout this whole thing, and certainly served more than just that. I would say maybe that's it's all connected here and there. I'm not doing a whole lot of sport, so now we're just going to go into the psychology.
Okay, well, as long as I have your full permission to, have this conversation, I'm down.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so, so here's the deal. Over the last 3 conversations we've had, each time I basically said, hey, I think I got this injury thing down. I think it's done. I think we're pretty much back to normal. Obviously, if I said it 3 times, the first 2 times were not correct. Turns out the 3rd time wasn't correct either. I'm now at the point, even though gosh, I did this slow ramp up after a month off, run, walk, and then lightly running and then building it up. And you know what I mean? Like super, super relaxed. And once you know it, a couple weeks ago, the knee got weird again. And it was like, it basically had the feeling I had before, which wasn't it wasn't pain per se. It was just like this weird feeling, and it would get achy, and you just couldn't run on it. And it just kind of came back, and not sure why. It just kind of did. And now it's like I get that feeling now when I ride a bike too. So I'm not running, I'm not biking, I'm just hanging around. So I got an MRI scheduled, but it's going to take a while. So it's going to be 2 weeks from 2 weeks from this call. So basically a month out from when I scheduled it. So it's wild. So I know you got the new puppy is in the house. We can hear a little bit of the barking. But I want people to think like, hey, is that puppy in my house? No. It's on the call. If anyone's listening.
My apologies to the audience. Maybe, I do enough podcasts. Maybe I'll eventually invest in a soundproof room, but we don't have that kind of cash flow right now. But anyway, first of all, like, I'm so sorry that happened. From somebody who's had, I at least count 10 broken bones. I know just how difficult it is when your body just is telling you no. Your brain's telling you one thing. Your body is just like, no, screw you. And it's hard.
Yeah. Not that I want to be more injured, but it is weird when you're like, I don't even know how this happened. I don't know what's going on. Right. Like it has that awkwardness of like, I can't even project into the future because I don't even know what's happening now. And it's like, at this point, I'm just like so done with like trying to project like, okay, if I do this and then this, then maybe I'll be back, not like on a date certain, but like, here's a range where I could come back and, it's hard for us not to think about the future. It's impossible for us not to think about it. So like, I'm always going to have that part in me. But like, at this point, I'm kind of like, I just need to like not think about it because I'm driving myself nuts, because every time I think I can see like a pathway, even if it's like a long pathway, it's like, nope, that's not going to work either. And I don't know, man, like I'm at the point now where like the last thing I want to hear after this MRI isn't like serious news. It's like the thing that I'm most dreading right now is hearing like, oh man, I don't know, we couldn't really see anything. Because then it's like, well, something's wrong. Like there's not, we're not wondering if something's wrong. Right? We're not like in medical school looking at a cadaver like, hey, this guy's have a knee injury, right? Like I have a knee injury and I'm just worried. Like I know enough runners and even runners that I coach who've gone in to get imaging and they're like, oh yeah, we couldn't see anything. And you're like, well, where does that leave me?
Yeah. It's just like, okay, thanks. What do I do now?
Yeah. So that's where I'm dreading. And like, I keep running this situation. I'm on my mind's on like stuck on repeat now of like rerunning like that scenario. Like, how are you going to handle it if they're like, huh, that's weird. Too bad it hurts. Not really sure what we can do about it.
Right. And, I know some doctors are wonderful. Some kind of have that lack of empathy that you just kind of portrayed. So this has obviously taken up a pretty good chunk of your thought space.
100%. Yes. Not to say it hasn't taken up 100% of my thought space. It has certainly taken up a lot of my thought space. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and so, okay, we're kind of sitting here, kind of 2 weeks from now, going through various scenarios. And it sounds like you keep arriving at the one that is kind of the quote unquote, maybe worst for you.
Yeah. And I think it's because I've kind of experienced the other side of it where like, in the beginning, I was like, yeah, this is going to be like a 2 or 3 day thing. Like I wasn't fatalistic the whole way. It was like, first time I was like, yeah, I think this is like, I'll just take the weekend off and I'll be fine. Then I was like, you know what? If I take a week, that will really be giving me a lot of time, right? Like this is so minor. A week off. Holy cow. Like that's probably overdoing the rest, right? Then it's like, oh, I'm taking a month off. okay, I'm going to see the PT. He's putting me through like all these tests and he's moving my knee like in every direction. And it's like, it almost feels like he's going to like tear my ACL. He's moving my knee around so much. Again, just to see if there's anything structurally wrong with it. And he's like, oh man, this feels fine. And it wasn't like from a lack of empathy. Like he was trying to figure out. And I'm like, all right, well then I guess, just strength, PT and rest. All right. And we'll figure it out. And then that didn't work either. And now I'm just kind of like, they better find something in there because like we've already tried the rest thing, and like, I don't want to rest for 6 months,
So it just sounds like what you're looking for is direction, and not just direction, but a plan that looks completely different than the one you've been following, because you keep ending up in the same spot. So one thing that jumped out earlier was just that we're future casting an awful lot, don't you think?
For sure.
Yeah. And, because I think we kind of, this is a possible scenario. This is not the only scenario that you can end up in. And, let's just play devil's advocate and get that out of the way. So what if the doctor basically says you have an alien in your knee? What can you handle it? How do you want to respond to news like that? Like, I'm a fan of actually kind of going there and maybe taking away some of the scariness of it. It's not going to take all the disappointment away. But okay, if this happens, can you handle it?
So you're basically saying, say your worst fear is realized. What happens then?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. So he comes back, or she comes back, and is like, yeah, we didn't see anything. Like, we believe you, but like, I also really can't help you. And that happened. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, great. Then it's just kind of like, I guess that basically what it means for me is, I'll just go down like a certain, like in no particular order, I guess, like from a specific running perspective, it's like, okay, we are now on like full, like, what do they call it? When someone is like, oh yes, basically like indefinite suspension. Like your knee from running, you are indefinitely suspended. We do not know when you will be returning. We can't even give you a timeline. There will be no running for a very long time, because even 6 weeks off isn't enough. So it's like, all right, well then it's going to be a lot longer than 6 weeks then, right? If 6 weeks wasn't long enough, I doubt 7 weeks would have been long enough either. So, it's going to be a long time. Biking still bothers it. So it's like, okay, if you don't want to continue to gain weight, which is what's currently happening, then you're just going to have to find a new activity, and one that you, at the current moment, you aren't particularly fond of. Like, I don't like swimming, right? I don't want to go swimming. Like, I like being in the pool, but I'm not a fan of like doing laps, but maybe that's what it means, right? Like, and maybe it just means that I'm walking for 2 to 2.5 hours a day to get the same stimulus that like 45 minutes a day of running would give me. Because there is like a 3-to-1 ratio there. And it's like, all right. And then you just, I guess, throw in lifting on top of it. Again, I like lifting, but like lifting isn't like, especially if I have to baby my lower body, like lifting is not going to give me like a cardio workout. Like, I can't even do a HIIT workout if I can't do the leg part, So I'm kind of there. I guess on some level you'd be like, hey, well, you can just, I guess a potential positive is like, I could say, all right, well, I'm just going to really, really try to dial in my nutrition. The negative so far has been like, I've been emotionally eating, which has been the opposite of dialing in my nutrition. Again, doesn't mean I will continue to do it. Nor does it mean that that's destiny, but that has been the reaction so far. Yeah, and then the other part too is like, frankly, like the whole idea of this was to overcome this cycle, because this has been a cycle for years now. It's like, hey, now it's just like, shockingly, like even worse than previous years instead of better, and that's so like not. That is quite literally the opposite of what I was hoping for.
Yeah. And, I think like from, given that from the running podcaster's perspective, like, how does that feel when we're faced with this big unknown? You're just like, well, look, running is a big chunk of my career. And would you or would you not say that it's a part of your identity?
Hey folks, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know my love and affection for Previnex. It's my favorite supplement brand. I always take their multivitamin. I always take their Joint Health Plus, and I live and die by that. But with that said, the other thing that I have every single day is the Previnex Neurify Shake. I just love it. I mean, this is my my schedule every morning. I wake up with the kids, I do all their stuff, I get them ready for school, and at 7:30, I have my shake. All right. Drop off the kids around 8:30 at school, and then I just literally drive from the school, and then I go for my run. And it works out perfectly. I have that shake about an hour before my run, and it's perfection. I get all the nutrients I need. It tastes great. I'm full, but I'm not too full. You know what I mean? The run still goes really, really well. And it's just perfection. I love it. So I'm telling you, if you want to have the breakfast that not only fuels you, gives you a ton of nutrients, tastes good, and is incredibly quick and easy to make, you cannot go wrong with Neurify Plus. So go over to Previnex.com. That's Previnex. That's Previnex.com and use code RUNNER15 at checkout to save 15% on your first order today. It is, but before this series, like, my running wasn't necessary to the podcast. This series is a 1-year sojourn, which is fun, but no matter what happened, it was going to end at the end of July, mid-August, right? Like that was going to happen. So that's fine. Ultimately, I don't think I need to, I know this. I don't need to run in order to do this well. Because it wasn't about me in the first place. So I'm not too worried about that. In addition, I don't need to be super active as a runner to be a good coach. So that is kind of like my other revenue stream. That isn't necessary either. I don't think it necessarily affects the pod. I think, it is nice to share the journey on social media. And I think I do have people who I like to, commune with about like our running journeys, and that's fun. But, ultimately other people get hurt all the time too. So I don't know. I don't think that takes it away. So I think it's more of just like what it's doing to me personally. And the other thing too is that like just a general frustration of it. Like I was like the big motivation for this whole thing wasn't to be like, hey, I found this great new way of making content. Like that was not it. It was more of like, I was going to do this first. And then I was like, oh, should I make this content? Like for me, it was more of like, hey, I feel like I'm capable of being a much better runner than I have been. And I really want to dedicate myself to it. I'm no longer working a full-time job. This is my job. I can really spend some time doing this. And I really want to see what I can do. And I was excited to go down that road, and just so frustrated in years past where like, I felt like every year I was getting less fit and I was running worse every year, like little bit by little bit. And I wanted to kind of stem the tide. And then ultimately to make a big leap forward to like so many of the people I've interviewed, who've hit their 40s or whatever age and reached new levels because they put time into it that they hadn't put in the past or whatever. And I was excited to be like, have my own little like mini version of that, or maybe even a major version of that. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, all right, no, all hope is lost, because I can never do that now. But it is be like, all right, like instead of going down that road, I'm just repeating now year 4 of this almost identical cycle but with the caveat being all the injuries are very different, and a lot of them weren't even like connected to running in terms of when they happened. It was just like freak stuff. So it's not even like, hey, like if I just fix like my posterior chain, like I can stop these injuries. Like that's not quite, it's not like, it's not this systemic issue.
That's the most maddening thing of it all, is you're just like, where is this coming from? Because, I tongue in cheek said an alien in your knee, but because it's, I'm familiar with meniscus tears and obviously fractures. and as the rest of the running world is too. But this is it's just different.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Who knows? Maybe it is a meniscus tear. I don't know. Like I brought on a new athlete yesterday who actually someone who I knew when I was little. And he had a meniscus tear a couple years ago, and like I had him on a discovery call, and I'm like, tell me everything, because I'm sitting there like trying to connect connect the dots in my life to his injury. Being like, is that what it is? Is it a meniscus?
So again, that is another kind of possible route or scenario or something like that too. So I think kind of circling back to what I was talking about earlier is, this is just one of those things, like, it's what it is, and you're probably going to have better days with it, and there's probably going to be days when you're just completely and utterly frustrated. I know when I was in a walking boot early this year, it's some days I was okay with it, and then other days, like, I wanted to throw the boot across the floor. Did not do that because it's big and heavy, and I like my furniture. But it's just like because I at that point, I didn't know. I'm just like, is this going to heal? Is this something that may need surgery? Is this something that's going to heal on its own? It's one of those things that it's, if we sit and kind of catastrophize and start looking at all these future scenarios, because, I know me personally, I was so worried about getting a screw put in my foot. And I was just like, well, if that happens, I'm done. I probably don't need to be racing anymore and all that kind of stuff. And I was just like, Adrian, what are you doing? I was like, and again, it is a possibility, not the possibility. So I think we want to kind of find some kind of thought anchors to fall back on if we find ourselves kind of in the doctor's office, in the exam room, hearing the news you don't want to hear. On one hand, we want to be like, okay, can I handle it? Yeah, I'll be really sad, but there's a path I don't want to go down, but maybe I don't have the energy and I just need to kind of just focus a little bit more on today or something like that.
Right. And I have found that I'm not so much like screaming mad as I'm just like, I'm equally miserable to be around. Don't get me wrong. To my family's utter delight, I'm sure. But more of like, I'm just like despondent. Like, good grief. Like, here we go again. And as if like, when you have little kids, like there's so much that's already like stuff that's like basically on repeat that is not enjoyable. Like saying the same things every single day. And, like them not listening, or like, all right, how many times do I have to please just ask you to do this? It's almost like every day is like a brand new day in terms of like their memory of certain tasks that need to be done or whatever. And it's like, I already have enough like repetitive stuff that like isn't inherently enjoyable. Like here's like all of a sudden this other thing where it's like, all right, now this is a thing now that I have to like, that's repetitive. And like, how's my knee feeling? How's my knee feeling? How's my knee feeling? How's my knee feeling? Like it's constant. And it just sucks. So again, I am doing a whole lot of whining here, but I'm just trying to express like, this is just kind of what's been going on. And it's really like been bumming me out. And I'm trying to like, I don't know. I'm trying not to dwell on it, but it's hard when you're like, hey, I have this whole, like my whole routine is off now too. Like this is like, my whole life is like the things that I do during the day have now changed drastically. And it's something that I enjoy. So it's not only like, hey, like I don't want to be injured just like, cause it stinks, but it's like, I know I'm also just not doing something that I inherently find enjoyable. And like, I don't know when I'm going to be doing it again. And I know it's not going to be like I know this, right? Like, it's not going to be like I'm doing it like 3 weeks from now. It's not like I'm going to be running, right? Like I know that. And it's like, all right, well then when or if. Right. So that's kind of the bummer. Tons of catastrophizing, tons of future casting, but it's hard not to, right?
Oh, I get it. Like I was just telling oh my God, am I going to have hardware put in me? And it was as much training as I have, that was pretty intrusive thought. So, what I, had to do was just stop. And, I was talking about anchor statements is like, okay, is first of all, if, I find myself just really in a funk, or you find yourself really in a funk, just let yourself not wallow per se, but kind of, okay, I have a period of time every day if I need it, just to feel sad or just to feel frustrated or something like that. Because I think a lot of times we're like, well, I shouldn't feel this way, or I'm sick of feeling this way. And then we feel bad for feeling bad. So that's kind of a bottom level way of just even beginning to cope with something like this is this sucks. I'm pissed. It's the same every day, and at least acknowledging it, but then be like, okay, you know what, man, we're going to go kick ass on a podcast today or something like that. Or, you know what, I'm going to do everything I can to find some enjoyment in doing something with my family or whatever.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Does it replace running? No. But again, it's, just having just some tools in your toolbox, because sometimes they'll be really effective. Sometimes they won't. But kind of knowing, okay, I'm feeling this way. Okay, I acknowledge that. I'm having thoughts of future casting. I'm ruminating on everything being the same. Okay, what's important to me? What do I value? I need to move in that direction.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's funny because I sit here, I'm talking to you, I'm like, yeah, why aren't I doing that already? Like, what's the problem? Because it's a perfectly sensible advice and not something that's like earth shattering either.
Yeah, and the hardest part of being just a human, but especially being an athlete and enjoying this type of stuff is, of course we're gonna, stuff's gonna happen. And, especially when it doesn't make sense, it's even harder. But that's why I'm just like, okay, reining in kind of our thoughts. It's such an important practice, and not, denying them, just kind of just starting to take a step back and just be like, okay, I'm having these. And, it probably will cause you to feel a certain way. But, this is kind of, you're getting my injured athlete 101 talk. So
good.
I should have told you that at the get-go. But anyway, it's just, and this is why kind of going in the direction of what's important, what is kind of spinning in a decent direction in your life is, okay, I'm feeling this, I'm having these thoughts. You know what? They might just have to go with me. And maybe I will get in a workflow, or maybe I'll get really involved in a conversation, and that kind of stuff will fade into the background. So basically what I'm trying to get at is, we're probably going to have, until we have a solution, this is probably going to be something that's going to stick around. So we want to be like, okay, how can I work with this and not against it so much, so that, just maybe I'll start having some days where maybe my head's not a terrible place to live. Maybe I'm not a terrible person to live with and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is that, like, for me, like, part of what you're saying means, like, all right, like, just not caring about my running for a while. And that's perfectly reasonable, except
that's a real, and I realize how hard of an ask that is. But kind of moving that circle off to the side a little bit and pulling something else. And of course, we can always rearrange our circles or the things on our plate. But, I think it's kind of figuring out, okay, we're not going to get that high or that dopamine, that really strong dopamine hit. Who knows? I say that some people may really get that driving a golf ball. I don't know. But anyway, but we can find ways to at least start to try and increase feelings of kind of productivity, still being kind of connected with your life.
Hey guys, do you want to run farther and faster and recover quicker and easier? Do you want to feel healthier than you've ever felt before? Then you need to make a change. And that's exactly what Inside Tracker is all about. Founded by scientists in aging, genetics, and biometric data from MIT, Tufts, and Harvard, Inside Tracker is a personalized health and wellness platform like no other. So what's their secret? First, Inside Tracker uses patented algorithm to analyze your body's data and offer you a clearer picture than ever before about exactly what's going on inside of you. Then Inside Tracker provides you with a concrete, science-backed, tractable action plan for reaching your performance goals and being your healthy best. Now, for a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering my listeners 25% off. That's right, 25% off. So enter today, or say not enter today. It's not a giveaway. To enter, just go to insidetracker.com/ramblingrunner. That's right, insidetracker.com/ramblingrunner. Change is an inside job. Start inside. If you've been listening to this show for a while, then you already know that I put out this podcast on Anchor. Now, here we are. Start of a brand new year. What are you going to be doing this year that may be a little different? Maybe trying something new, maybe for your business or for your personal life or just a hobby. For so many people, part of that equation is creating a podcast. And while mine has become far more popular than I ever imagined, I just created it as a hobby, something that I wanted to do with my time to talk to people that I was interested in talking with when it came to running. And you might have a very similar goal, maybe about a different hobby, but something similar to that. And using Anchor is the best way to get your podcast out in the world. It's basically one-stop shopping for podcasts. You can record using Anchor, you can edit using your Anchor, and it distributes to all of the most popular podcast platforms as well. It's really as simple as that. So go to anchor.fm today. You can watch all the videos on how you can get started. And as you will see, it really doesn't take much effort at all. It really doesn't. And for so many of us, it's easy to rationalize why we shouldn't start something. Ultimately, when it comes to podcasting, technology is not one of those things. There is no technology hurdle when it comes to putting out a podcast when you use Anchor. So go to anchor.fm today and go check it out.
Right. And I think the part that I have to dial in is like, it's the running part's always in my face. Like, those are my jobs, is in running. So it's not like you're like, hey, Matt, I need you to stop caring about the NBA and college basketball. It's like, wow, man, I've cared about them. I've cared about them since I was 10. But, you know, like, all right, well, no one in my house cares about that. And no one I talk to cares about it. So, you know, like, I'd prefer to still follow it, but I guess I could do it. Whereas we're like, hey, Matt, I need you to not care about your running. And like, all right, that's reasonable and probably the way I need to go in order to kind of like move past a lot of these feelings. But it's like, oh yeah, but also you're still going to be a run coach and you're going to record 3 podcasts a week on running.
Well, now that you say that, you make me sound incredibly unreasonable.
No, but it's more like, no, but your point is right. Like, I have to disconnect from it because I'm not going to have like all these positive thoughts about it.
Yeah. Or, you know, probably a way to word this is shifting your relationship with running.
Right.
Because you're in that space. You know, I've actually been really enjoying your road to the trials. Obviously, Kiara D'Amato is always going to be my favorite interview because she's just hilarious. But
oh man, just between me and you, because no one else is listening, I feel the same way. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, whenever they interview pros, there's a few of them that I'm going to on podcasts that I'm going to choose to listen to before others, and she's in my top 3 for sure.
I think Tyler Day, again, we're not going to go make a full pivot here, but I think Tyler Day is someone who also falls into that mix in terms of pure entertainment, even if we're not talking about running.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, you just look at a picture of the guy, you're just like, he'd be fun to hang out with.
Right.
Not that I'm judging and stereotyping, but anyway, so I think it's just like, okay, I do have a relationship with running, and, you know, maybe it's going to shift to a more professional versus personal. Cause I mean, this was a shift I had to make is, you know, I'm in a boot, barely being able to climb the stairs, and oh, here is a All-American track athlete sitting in front of me. And I had to help somebody prep for a national record attempt. And I can barely walk. So I get where you're coming from. And I'm just like, in order to survive, my relationship needs to be more professional with it.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. And it's just like, as much as it sucks, but again, it's everything has a season. And so it's just like, okay, this is where, you know what, running, we're not going to hang out together as much, but you know, we can still do some group activities or something. And I kind of just used a dating reference, but it's fine.
No, I like that. You know, that reference takes a nasty turn when it's like, oh yeah, but do those ever work? They're like, hey, we've broken up, but we still have mutual friends, and we're gonna like still see each other occasionally.
Depends on who we're talking about.
There you go. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess that's where I'm at. And you bring us some good points.
Yeah, well, I think it's just like you're not everybody. Like this thing that you're struggling with is I mean, it's unique. So it's just like your story, it probably isn't going to read like other people's stories. So, but you know, today is we're talking this through. You know, I'm sure you have some stuff to go record or edit or something like that. So it's just like, okay, how can we maximize today?
Right. The other thing I've been thinking about is that like, and this is something that I've been thinking about for, you know, pre-mastering 40, was just like running goals. Was that like, they seemed to create more negativity in my life than positivity.
Okay.
And that was like, all right, am I just doing these wrong? Like, I didn't feel like I had any audacious goals. They were all like, hey, like my coach says I should be able to do this because of my fitness. Like, okay, well then that will be my goal. Like, they're a professional. They see what I'm doing. They have other clients. They know what they're doing. All right, that'll be my goal then. Okay, fine. And it was like, even those goals were like, wow, like I never achieved any of them. And then it was like, wow, like this is now putting me in a negative space. So now I went through this point of like, should I even have running goals? Right? Or should I just run and like, if I do a race, I do a race, but like not have any goals attached to it. You know, I'm not saying like I wouldn't run hard, but like, I don't have goals. And it was like, I don't know if that makes a lot of sense either.
Well, it depends on what kind of goals we're talking about. The outcome focused ones, I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, but they can be really stressful. And, you know, while they feel amazing when we achieve them, they can break our hearts at the same, you know, also. So, you know, that's one way. And then I was talking to another athlete recently, and this individual was saying, you know what, the space I'm in right now, I just want to enjoy running pain free. And when I feel ready to start taking on more stuff, then you know what, I'll go to my next step. And I was like, and this is not your average hobby jogger that I'm referencing. And part of me, I'm just like, wow, it's kind of deep. And I actually believe this individual. So it's just like, they look so different because that's more of a process goal, you know, because especially coming off an injury, like I suggest everybody is, before you decide, okay, what do I want, is just make friends with the sport again. Is just kind of just enjoy, just again, you put 3-4 miles in the bank, you're smiling, you're sweating a little bit, and you know what? My body feels good. Like I mean, that's just as magical sometimes, depending on where you're at, as, you know, a sub 40 10K or something like that.
Yeah, I hear that. I think the competitive side of me is hard to tamp down too, you know? So I think
well,
that,
it sounds like your new opponent is pain.
Yeah.
So it's going to be Matt versus his knee at this stage. So who's going to win?
Right.
Poor Matt. I'm sorry. I keep beating you up.
no, it's true. It's true. So what are you going to do about it? Yeah. I don't know. I guess part of me is like, I'm like trying to like fight gravity, and then that's how it feels. Like, hey man, maybe just running goals. And I don't believe this, but there are moments when I'm like being particularly pessimistic, where I'm just like, dude, there's a lot of people who can sit and do new things at 40 and all of that. Maybe you're just not one of them. Maybe like that's just not how it's going to work for you. And yeah, like you're injury prone. You get injured every year for the last 5 years. Why do you think it's going to stop now? Right? Like at some point, maybe this is just how it's going to be. And you have to be okay with it. And it's like, I know I'm being super pessimistic and fatalistic. And then part of me is like, well, the sample size is growing. So maybe you're not. And, these aren't things that I like to say publicly because I feel like I'm like, so super down. But like when I go down that road and then like, well, if that's true, like that really bums me out. Like that it stinks to be like at that if that is true, I'm not saying it is, but say it was, I'd be like, wow, then I've officially entered like a new season of my life and one that I'm not terribly excited about, So, especially when I talk to all these people who don't have that issue again. So, there are moments where like when I'm really, really in my own head and feeling down, that's usually where my head is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, makes sense is we're not in a positive space. We're just like, you know what, this is just how this is going to be. And, we don't know what's going to happen next week. We don't know what's going to happen at the doctor's appointment. So it's either, okay, there's a missing piece of the puzzle here, or even just kind of figuring out, okay, how do I, better work with the hand I'm dealt. So I think these are just things to just kind of ponder more than have an answer for or something like that. Just kind of thinking out loud here, but I think I think this is just something that I've been really into myself. It's just like, okay, how do I work with what I have? I'm just like, I'm not as durable as, the other girls that I train with and stuff like that. Maybe that's okay. Maybe and it's one of those things where just like, okay, even if I don't get this, you know what? I can still like the sport. I can still, engage in it. I can still be okay with myself and my life. And again, this is all abstract process focused stuff, but just some stuff to kind of knock around sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Well, got the appointment in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how that goes.
Sending all the good vibes.
Yeah. I just have to relax about it and just not care as much, which is tough. But I really don't have much of a choice. So I feel like the sooner I get to that point, the better.
Yeah. And, just kind of making little decisions every day or at least twice a day. Okay. How much power, does this need to have over me? So like I was talking about, okay, how much, it's like we need to kind of have a little bit of space to be upset, but then it's just like, okay, I've got other things going on. There's more to my life than running. You're not going to take all of me.
All right. What do you suggest? So like given what I do, people are super nice and like they follow along and they like the series, and I'll get questions quite a bit like, hey, how you doing? How you feeling? Stuff like that. Like, how would you suggest going about answering that? Cause like, I don't want to be like, I don't want to just ignore people because I'm like, oh, I don't want to think about it. But I also don't want to like relive it during every conversation or every exchange. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what pops into my head is like just kind of, do you get a lot of like direct messages that you're just kind of going back and forth with every day? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay. You know what I would do is I would just kind of just set aside time to answer questions and have a designated space and time for that, as opposed to constantly going back and forth and stuff like that. Like I was, I know what you're talking about because like even now my coach will ask how my foot is, and sorry, Dave, if you're listening, but I'll get low-key annoyed every single time. And I was just like, I'm like, it's fine. Especially like while I was injured, I'm like, it's still broken.
Right.
It's just like, okay. It's just like, so how is it? I'm like, well, I didn't want to walk on my hands when I got out of bed today. Is that good? Okay, that's dramatic, but anyway.
No, hey.
I say
you're
that
speaking to someone who just complained for 36 straight minutes, so I hear you.
I literally have felt that way, and you know what? I'm actually not ashamed. So I will never learn how to do that. I think just because my upper body strength is just not there. Very sad.
That's funny.
So yeah, but this is just kind of, it sucks, and I don't want to invalidate or deny what you're feeling. So it's like it's messy, but it feels like this, you're just kind of in this vortex right now. You will come out of it. And if you don't come out of it, I will fly you down to Texas so you can yell at me. How about that?
There you go. What an offer. What are you doing this weekend? I'm flying to Texas to go yell at this worst person who helped me pro bono.
These are the things I do for my clients. In all seriousness, like, I do take, whether it's pro bono or, I'm working with an organization or something like that. I take it seriously. Be honest, like, I want people to get something out of their time with me. I probably shouldn't open the door to get screamed at, though. I don't think I deserve that. But anyway, my own issues.
It's a nice way to call someone's bluff. Like, how upset are you? Because there's a plane ticket on your dresser if you're really upset.
Yeah. Pat, cool clothing. It's getting hot down here.
There you go. All right, Adrian, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
You bet, man.
Adrian, thank you so much for the extended conversation. Really appreciate it. Also, big shout outs, of course, to Inside Tracker, Previnex, and Tracksmith for supporting me all year long. It is just an honor that they've been on board this whole time. Go check them out. Links in the show notes to all of their sites, along with the promo codes. You'll see that no matter what episode I'm putting out, you're always going to see all that stuff in the show notes. Over on Road to the Trials podcast, Road to the Trials heating up. We had Drake Relays recaps with Frank Lara and Abe Alvarado. Also, we're going to be reconnecting with the ladies in the series, hopefully over the next week or so. Olivia and Kira working through some little injury stuff, and Dana Giordano, who's doing her high altitude camp over in Utah. Check in with them and see how everything's going. Thank you so much for listening, and happy running. This has been a production of Rambling Runner Podcast. This podcast is produced by David Margetti of In Post Media. Thank you to Meta P for the music. His song Righteous Path featuring Rex Mayhem and Chip Fu is produced by Symphonic Bang.
Yeah. Enterprising in my surroundings, I'm finding the quietest estates these days. Just representation of storm brewing, amazed that the focus remains the focal point of my change. I'm trying to show this industry.